Gemar Chatima Tova. Brene Brown, a sociological researcher and in her own words a storyteller, is a research professor at the University of Houston in the Graduate School of Social Work. She has spent much of the last decade exploring the concepts of shame, vulnerability, and human connection. When Brene Brown set out to research these concepts, she interviewed people. And when she asked them about love, they told her stories of heartbreak. And when she asked them about stories of connection, they told her about disconnections. She realized that people focused on those moments in their lives which led to the brokenness and not what connected people. And she began to explore the concept of vulnerability and how it is a core function of our lives and serves as the birthplace of shame and fear and joy and love. To her, shame means the fear of disconnection. People are afraid of being disconnected. As a matter of fact, as she quantified her research, she found that those with a strong sense of love and belonging believed they had a strong sense of worthiness, and so they were better able to handle their vulnerability. But those without a strong sense of worthiness were more apt to take less risks in their life, and they were less willing to open themselves to the potential growth that comes with allowing oneself to be vulnerable. When thinking about her research, it seems to me that people who have the courage to allow their vulnerability to show are more able to grow as individuals from moment to moment. And it dawned on me that this is also what Kol Nidrei is all about. Being together in this sanctuary tonight shows a great deal of courage when it comes to us confronting the new year and recognizing the possibilities of growth and for us to grow as human beings by expressing our vulnerability to God. Many of us attend Kol Nidrei because we have a sense of responsibility, or we have a sense of expectation, or even just a little bit of guilt. Step back for a moment and recognize how awesome a moment this is for all of us. The point of Yom Kippur is that we are ready to put our shortcomings and our weaknesses and our mistakes on the table before God. And we get to do that all within the context of a loving community. So we are not by ourselves. We recognize that we are not alone. And we don't have to travel this scary path alone. We realize that moments become more about the potential redemption than they are about our sins. And this directly mirrors the story of creation. Rosh Hashanah is the birthday of the world. Hayom Harat Olam, we sing at Musaf on Rosh Hashanah. Today the world stands at its birth. On Rosh Hashanah, all creation is called to judgment. And if Rosh Hashanah is the birth of the world, then Yom Kippur must be that moment just after Adam and Eve have eaten from the tree of knowledge, from the tree of good and evil. Because it was in that very moment that they recognized right from wrong. It was in that moment they had to cover themselves. It was in that moment that they began living as human beings endowed with God's ability to create. And it was also in that moment that Adam and Eve understood their vulnerability and that they experienced their mortality and aloneness because they were disconnected from each other and from Gan Eden, from paradise. For the first time in their lives, they were no longer carefree, able to wander their paradise at will. No longer were they able to eat from all of the trees, and no longer was everything just there for them. Instead, Adam and Eve would have to work hard to make a life for themselves. Would the harvest come in on time, and would they have enough food to sustain themselves? And would Eve survive through childbirth? Their lives would be subject to the whims of nature and the randomness of the universe. They were now vulnerable in the world, and they would enjoy the blessings, and the struggles. Just last week, I once again recognized my vulnerability when I gave my son Yonah the car keys for the first time, and he drove us home from the motor vehicle department. And while I know that Yonah, like all teens his age, will one day be a superb driver, he's just starting out. And I thought to myself, how incredible it is that my little boy is now able to drive a car. And like most parents, I will worry when I send him to Wawa for milk. But I am also proud and excited that he will begin to spread his wings further and fly from the nest on his own. And while this is the second time I have a kid beginning to drive, it is no easier than the first, because each is unique and different. I also know that if I didn't do this, he would never grow and develop in a way that he should develop as an adult. But I gotta tell you, it's really scary. Scary to hand my kid big new responsibilities. I'm scared that while I may trust him, what about all of those other crazy drivers out there who will not be as careful or as concerned? I don't want to lose him. God forbid. But I also know that if I don't do this, if I don't hand him the keys and let him drive, I may be holding him back. And where does that get me? And then the thought comes into my head that this week I handed him the car keys. And how possible is it that one day he will ask me for my car keys back because I shouldn't be driving anymore? And I know that I'm not alone because so many of us have handed our car keys to the kids. And I also know so many children who are asking their parents for the keys back because it's time for them to stop driving. And it means they, the parents, are losing their independence, and that they are all the more vulnerable to the trials and tribulations of life. It's an acknowledgement of their aging and a confronting of our own mortality. And that just adds to our vulnerability as human beings. And what makes this just a bit easier is that I know there are others in the same place that I am, because they are handing their keys to the kids and taking them back from their parents. How many of you know exactly what I'm talking about? On several occasions over the years, I've been out at the cemetery for a funeral. And I've asked Cantor Culp, what's it like to officiate at funerals of people he knows so well? And in his typical fashion, he's never answered the question. But now I know why he never answered the question. Because I realized that when I go out to the cemetery, I no longer see stone monuments. I see the people who I've had the blessing to know. And to me, some of the most profound moments of my work is when I help families through the joyous moments of their lives and the saddest ones. The ones where I help family care for and bury their loved ones. People are at their most vulnerable when they have a life cycle moment. They are the most engaged and they have the most emotion. Watching parents and grandchildren as their child is named is some of the most wonderful moments in the world. They want the moment to be just right because their hopes and prayers are answered with this new child. And of course, at the other end, it takes great courage to say goodbye to their loved one with dignity and respect. It is in this moment that I see people at their most vulnerable, because they too want the moment to go smoothly. They want to honor their loved one, and most of all, they want to keep their emotions in check, because the pain and the loss are palpable and real in that moment. A brit milah, or a baby naming, elicits celebration for the future of that child. Funerals provide the opportunity to look back and to learn from the life of the person who passed away and how the family mourns. To me, it is a profound moment because we are an individual being supported by a community. Many have told me that the experience of Shiva gives them a feeling of support because people come into their home. They make a minyan. They take care of the house. They send a meal or something delicious to eat. And they are overwhelmed with the love and comfort they feel. And when they come to shul to recite Kaddish, how comforted they are to know that others are and were in the same place they were. And they find the strength they never knew they had to cope with the vulnerability of losing a loved one because they are embraced in their community. The tension between individuals and community brings to us the strength we need to find wholeness after we have been broken by the events of our lives. This evening and throughout the holiday, we recite the vidui, the confessional. It is a moment for us when we expose our vulnerability to God and put on the table our mistakes, our wrongdoing, and our weaknesses. The word vidui, which is related to vinit vadeya, used in the Breshit story, referring to nakedness. It has the context of vulnerable. To be naked is to be exposed to the elements, means to be vulnerable. It is the moment that we put our vulnerability on the line, and as standing by ourselves, we are surrounded by family and friends and community, and together we seek forgiveness. And what we begin to realize is that in our vulnerable, exposed state, we can find redemption within community because we realize we are not alone. Tonight, in Kol Nidrei, we put our vulnerabilities on the table and we see ourselves for who we truly are, imperfect human beings, and not what others may want for us or what we might think we are. And the moment we do that, the moment we recognize who we really are, is that we realize that while we may be less than what we want to be, we realize that we are imperfect and we have room to grow. It is then that we find the ability to grow a little, because we learn just a bit more about ourselves and about our lives. We grow in wisdom and of life because we face our fears, our vulnerabilities, and we find the courage to be willing to take the risk and live a full and fulfilling life. And then, after a full day of prayerful confessional, standing in the midst of community tomorrow night, we will pray together the fifth and final service of Yom Kippur called Ne'ilah. And if you have never been, you should come back tomorrow night to feel the power of that moment. The sun is setting, and the gates of heaven are closing, and the day is coming to an end. And we just know that God has passed from the throne of judgment to the throne of mercy. And God is there with compassion. God is there with compassion and comfort to help us put together our brokenness, and we are beginning to heal. At the very end, expressing our mounting excitement and enthusiasm, we recite the Shema, declaring our faith, affirming our love in God, and the love that God has for us, and the love that the community has for us as we build toward the final moment of Yom Kippur and the sounding of the Tekiah Gedolah and the words L'Shana Haba'ah Yerushalayim. Here, those words are more than a hope that next year we'll be in Jerusalem. They are the embodiment of our potential for our national redemption and our ability to find wholeness in addition to peace. Perhaps the most powerful moment of the day is that we have completed the Machzor, made our way from brokenness to wholeness, and we find the strength that a year from now, and for many years from now, that we will go back through this process again and again and again. And we will put our vulnerabilities on the table, and we will take a risk to grow, and we'll do so each and every time. And when we do, we will do so with such compassion and with connection to community, to a community of people who are doing just the same as we are. And we will find in that ritual the strength to live our lives to their fullest potential. And we will live our lives knowing that sometimes we will fall flat on our faces. But we know someone will be there to pick us up, tell us they love us, and we will know that we belong, even though we may be less than perfect. But so is everyone else. Rabbanu Shalom, Creator of the universe, you have created us not to live in paradise, but to live in this world. You created us to live, to learn, to love, and to one day die. You have endowed us with the intellect and reasoning and emotion, but you have made us imperfect so that we could always grow to be more than we are today. I pray today that we will open our vulnerabilities to you, God, that we will take the difficult and yet necessary risk to grow and to become more than we are today by admitting our wrongs in the midst of this loving, caring, and compassionate community. I pray that when we hear the long blast of the shofar tomorrow evening, that we will find the wholeness and peace because you are with each one of us. As the Kohanim once recited over the community, Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichuneka, Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God watch over us and be gracious to us. May God's face shine upon us and give us graciousness. May God's face shine upon us and grant us shalom.